Name is Kim. I'm your co-host for the Home Alone podcast.
And I'm Noah, the other co-host for the Home Alone podcast. And today we will be going over the famous Christmas movie that we all know and love to this day, Home Alone, and we're just going to go over the fun facts, behind the scenes type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Your little behind-the-scenes breakdown. Here's kind of a glimpse into what we're looking at here. We got fake movie, cash lost, world record, some cursing, deadly stunts, Star Wars, star power, and finally closing. Let's get started. First things first, we got behind the genius, John Hughes himself. He penned the script for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and also Christmas Vacation and Breakfast Club. This guy was really masterful at creating coming of age teen comedy movies. This was his domain, and he wrote Home Alone exactly for this. Except it wasn't a teen. We have I think it's a 10-year-old Macaulay Culkin filling the shoes. But this is John Hughes, pictured to the left here, and he's the genius behind the script.
All right, and going over John Hughes, he hired Chris Columbus, who was the writer of the Goonies movie that came out in 1985, and a failed director, but Hughes saw potential in him, and with his ability to write perfectly for kids, Columbus also directed Hughes' 1989 film Christmas Vacation. So John Hughes saw a lot of potential in Chris Columbus, so he thought he'd give him a try on this movie, and I think it was a huge success.
Yeah, he did really, really well. Now, behind the story, this part gets me every time. This is so interesting because John Hughes was such a stubborn person. So to hear that he ping-ponged the script back and forth between John Hughes and Chris Columbus, him and the director, because the director had a more of a feel to the movie where he wanted the meaning of Christmas to really shine through on this one. The importance of family and etc. like that. But John Hughes really wanted boisterous comedy, and boisterous meaning really bizarre, out there, slapstick mostly, from our Wet Bandits and such. But Chris Columbus wanted a more grounded take, and both rewrote scenes constantly and ping ponged it back and forth between each other and compromised on their dramatic meeting of Christmas with their boisterous comedy.
All right, now going over, so WB offered, so the movie budget for Home Alone was $10 million. And worldwide to this day, Home Alone made $476.7 million in the box office.
Yikes! That's a lot of weight. Oh man. Uh,
Sorry, yeah, hello. There was a bit of a controller mishap, but anyway, we'll come to find that the issues that happened around what was going on with the budget, some had budget cuts, some like the budget kind of got a bit lowered because of star salaries, but we'll go over that later in the podcast.
comes full circle. It's a complete dramatic story. But we want to talk about behind the front doors. Now, this part is exciting to me. So, for Ferris Bueller's Day Off and the Breakfast Club, John Hughes really took a liking to this Chicago school called New Trier High School, and it's an abandoned high school in the suburbs of Chicago. Now, this is where he filmed those famous school scenes for Ferris Bueller's Day Off and the famous library setting for the Breakfast Club. John Hughes has total access through and through of this building, and at the time he thought it was perfect to bring the set of Home Alone to a freaking school. That is insane to think about, but it's an old stomping ground for him that he's familiar with, and we'll come to find out what crazy sets they built in crazy places.
All right, now going over the actual McAllister house. It actually took the studio 10 weeks to find the perfect house, as they would call it. And they were trying to find this in Chicago, Illinois. So what they did is they built the set to match the colors of the Christmas Eve type thing. So everything was either green or red. Even in the movie, the phone, and as you can see in the pictures, in the slideshow here, you could also see the walls, the flowers, the carpet itself. It's all a Christmas themed house, and I believe they found a really good fit for the movie, and I wouldn't imagine any other house to be better.
Yeah, I totally agree as well. It's perfect. Oh my gosh, it just radiates Christmas spirit, especially with those lights. I want to focus in on this bottom left picture here on the set. That set is actually taken within a gymnasium in the school that they filmed it, which is crazy. They took a school and made it a sound stage. That's never been even thought of before. I don't even think any studios have copied the idea of that when it comes to building sets in a school gym. Behind the drama, so there was a bit of a drama backlash here. The Home Alone budget went up because we had star power join with great cast and crew, but the sets became to be a little too much when it came to production. So production value exceeded $14.7 million to make the movie, which isn't a crazy number when it comes to creating a movie at that time. So Warner Brothers, being the sticklers that they were, the cheapskates that they were, they canned the project. They're like, all right, we can't match your budget. There's not a chance. Pack up your bags.
All right, now going over the executive drama news. So the Fox executives Thomas Jacobson and Joe Routh gave John Hughes and the rest of the crew for the movie the necessary budget. Again, going over that was the $10 million budget. Because WB was shutting them down, but Fox at the same time was greenlighting them, giving them so much praise, and I believe without Fox's sort of go ahead on the production, I don't believe we'd have the same Home Alone we have today.
We actually would have never had Home Alone. So these supermen that John Hughes approached worked well. So that thank you. Thank you for a classic. Now I want to talk about a couple scenes. They started filming Valentine's Day 1990, a whole 10 months before its Thanksgiving release. First scene that they filmed was the convenience store scene where Kevin goes in to buy a toothbrush. Now, he's scared off by the big scary man with the shovel and the boots and the beard and the fading white hazy eyes. As he's evading capture from a policeman, he runs onto an ice rink and he starts slipping around. But in Chicago, February is very warm, very, very warm. So what they had to do was take these freezing coils and freeze the ground. They cranked these things up to 11, so to speak, and froze the ground underneath them. Basically threw a ton of water on top of these coils and froze the ground, and that's how they got the ice for the filming.
All right, now going over these funny effects that they use. So they actually use potato flakes as a snow substitute, and after a day or so, they would rot, emitting an awful smell that went all over the movie set. The money shot is pictured right, and it was filmed luckily with real snow, so it wasn't the same as them using potato flakes as a snow substitution. In fact, they filmed the whole movie out of order because when it snowed, it was go time to film any scene outside for as long as possible because obviously Home Alone taking place around Christmas time, you'd need to have the proper season to do that. So obviously when it was snowing, they kind of like were like go 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 on some of the scenes. And luckily, I don't believe they didn't have to use potato flakes as a snow substitution for that long because as we went over before, they would rot and would emit an awful smell to the set. So Home Alone executives, we thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. I couldn't even imagine working in an environment that reeks of rotten garbage. Um, Behind the Wet Bandits, we know him as Marv and oh my gosh, why did I have
Come
to
on,
forget his name?
come on. Harry. It's Harry.
Harry. Oh my word! I was working on this thing for like hours last night, and of course, one thing I forget. Anyway, back to the Wet Bandits. Marv was almost played by this gentleman pictured left here named Dan Roebuck. Now, Dan Roebuck is an esteemed actor, very, very esteemed. He's usually, this is up his alley when it comes to slapstick comedies and just fun family comedies like this. He was up for the role of Marv. They actually wanted him. They wanted Daniel Stern, who ended up playing Marv originally, but he backed out because he wanted a bigger paycheck. And he was really stern on that one. So he dropped out of the project. Dan Roebuck was flown into Chicago and set up and everything. He did a screen test with Joe Pesci, who plays Harry, and it didn't go well. They actually had zero chemistry. They were boring together, but when Daniel Stern did it, it was like it was meant to be.
Okay, speaking of John Pesci,
Joe.
Joe Pesci, came in at 9 instead of 7 of roll call, or no, came in at 9 instead of roll call at 7 because he wanted to play 9 holes all the time. The only way John could Joe, I keep calling him John. Thank you for. The only way he could read the scripts was to put F-bombs all throughout his lines because that's just the way he is. Then he wanted to swear, but instead he would create noises like angry sort of grunting, but in reality it was just him dropping an F-bomb or 7. So all of the grunts that you would hear throughout the movie that Harry would make whenever he'd get hit with, like, obviously the famous paint can scene with down the stairs. Anytime he's like that is him kind of trying to reimagine him like cursing, but obviously the script wouldn't really allow that.
Yeah, it's hard to be Joe Pesci, who comes off of working on these Martin Scorsese films like Casino or Goodfellas, and he was actually filming Goodfellas at the time of filming Home Alone. Basically, he filmed Home Alone in the winter and spring, but he also before that filmed in the fall and summer Goodfellas. So he was coming off a script that had his character constantly throwing down F-bombs. I mean, every single line he says has 1 or 2 in each sentence. I still don't know how that won an Academy Award, but anyway.
Anything's possible.
That's Pesci. Moving on, I want to talk about Candy. John Candy, R.I.P. What a great Canadian actor this guy was. He was incredible at improvising. That's why he was perfect for this role as one of the polka guys. He was the leader of this polka band in Home Alone, and he was in for one day only, but John definitely didn't know that he was working a 23-hour day. He completely overworked, but that's what John Hughes wanted out of him. So all the scenes that you see John Candy in this film, he did in one day, and he improvised most of it. He had his lines, his general kind of lines, but the scene where he's talking here, that's pictured, he's like, oh, come on, you know us, like, polka, polka, polka. He's like singing one of his songs his band with. That was completely improvised. That scene right there where he pulls the mother aside, completely improvised, and John Hughes loved it. It was the only part in the film that John Hughes was definitely okay with someone improvising. Otherwise, everyone else had to stick to the script, or it was nothing at all.
All right, speaking of improvisation, Macaulay Culkin, the famous scene where he realizes his parents aren't home, so this kid just goes crazy at his house, jumping on the bed and all that. That scene was improvised a little bit, especially the famous bathroom scene where he puts on what does he put on again? It's that
aftershave.
It's like that aftershave stuff, and obviously that burns the face a bit, especially for a child. So those scenes were improvised, and it was funny enough for them to keep it in the movie, and it's to this day. It's probably one of the most iconic movie scenes in history, almost. A young Macaulay Culkin, he did a really good job at this.
Macaulay. It's
Macaulay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Speaking of pain, when it comes to, that shot, we got behind the stunts. Pictured here is Troy Brown and Larry Nichols. Troy Brown was one of two for stunt doubles for Joe Pesci, and basically this dude did everything. Everything that you see in the film that Joe Pesci does, he did it for the stunts. So when he would fall off ice, he was told to fall high and fall hard. So that's not movie magic that they did there. It does capture it on multiple angles. It could have been manipulated, but he actually flew up. It actually hit the ground as hard as he could. But this guy's such an optimist that when he's talking about the film, he's talking about it like it's his passion. He's like, I love it. Even though this dude, pictured in the bottom left here with Joe Pesci holding Kevin McAllister on the back of the door, when the big guy in the black coat, the old guy in the black coat, smacks him in the back of the head, he actually got hit in the back of the head with a shovel, a metal shovel. He actually got hit in the back. Crazy to me. But he's such an optimist. He was crazy about the role, and he loved it to death. This is Larry Nichols. He basically did everything when it came to Kevin's stunts. Now, Kevin, in pictured in the bottom right, if you see, that's not Macaulay Culkin. If you double, triple look, that's him as a very much a younger guy, blonde, teenage kind of years. You can see that's not really Macaulay Culkin, but that's him actually on a wire, going across the backyard. So I thought that was really interesting. And did the stunt double actually for Marv actually step on a nail? That one I couldn't find out, but you have to assume, right? And next up.
All right, so in the one scene where Kevin is just, I believe he's enjoying a bit of ice cream,
Yeah.
watching some TV, where he was watching this movie, and he kind of uses that to his advantage, especially on the pizza guy scene, using the line of dialogue in the movie. So that was actually a fake movie that was filmed for this film, and the movie itself is only 1 minute and 20 seconds long, which honestly, but sadly, the actual filming does not exist. It was only made for this film. I know I want to hear the whole story behind Keep the Change, You Filthy Animal. I want to know too. But sadly, we're just going to have to stick with the 1 minute and 20 second clip we have from the movie.
Now, we got fake movies, but I want to talk about this church scene that got rewritten a ton of times because it was the most heartfelt turning point in the film, where Kevin actually connects with this older guy, finds out he has a son who's kind of estranged from him and all this jazz. But this is an actual church in Chicago. It's called the Trinity Methodist Church, and you can see it here, pictured left. That's it, in today's time, but top right, you're looking at it from the film, so you can see how they manipulated it with editing and all that stuff. Bottom right, we have the scene itself. It got rewritten, and actually the choir wasn't supposed to be there originally. John Hughes didn't write that. Chris Columbus put that in there. Hughes loved it so much he kept it in, and it even added to the old guy's kind of story because his granddaughter is playing in that choir. So it added a lot more story to the film, a lot more story to our older, scarier gentleman, and what a great scene.
All right, now going over one particular scene.
This is wacky.
So yeah, they filmed the flooded basement scene in a high school swimming pool. So as you can see on the left side of the slide, you can kind of see what they did there for the scene. And bear in mind, this is all built. This is all wooden built.
Yeah.
This takes a long time some days. And then as you can see to the right, you can see what it actually looked like during filming. And honestly, you can't even tell that's a school swimming pool. You can't tell at all. So
Sorry, you go ahead.
sorry, continue.
No, but it's crazy to me, when I found this out, that they filmed in a swimming pool. I mean, it's smart because it's a great water reserve and all this stuff, but that's like I don't know. Anyway, it's crazy to me. And what a fun fact. This picture bottom right here, they filmed that in an actual set. The pictured above, and if you look at the set photo, that little box area that they were in, that was only part of the house that Kevin ran into, and they had to make it all up and all this jazz. But it's just awesome how they built a water reserve in from this pool. And anyway, sorry, it's crazy to me. Behind the score, this one I'm really excited to talk about because John Williams is easily one of the best, like, when it comes to creating soundtracks for film. The Jurassic Park theme song is my ringtone. That's how much I love it. Star Wars, one of the best series when it comes to any fantasy sci-fi of all time. I love it more than Marvel. That's just how much I love it. And this guy penned the soundtrack for all 9 films. The prequels, the sequels, and the originals. This guy goes way back, and also the classic Superman soundtrack. Come on, can someone say friggin' theme song here? Yeah, this guy made that. He loved Home Alone so much because they sent it to him as a joke. Like, what if John Williams made the score? What if? And he actually loved it. And he made it as a favor because he wanted to be a part of it. And it brought the movie together. Because when I think of Home Alone, I think of that soundtrack. I'm not a great singer, so I'm not gonna hum it, but it's something that I think about when I think of Home Alone. And there's so much passion to it.
All right, now in the year the movie came out in the 1990s, it came out Thanksgiving, which means during the first time they filmed this, the film itself only took 10 months to make. When it comes to filming and editing, it's a score, and it's crazy to think about how it took only 10 months when some productions and movies take like 2 to 3 years to make, especially with like what was that, Incredibles 2? That took like 10 years, didn't it? But that's just
Yeah.
animation.
Yeah.
Um, but the competition for this movie was extremely heavy, with movies like the thriller, like The Predator, the famous Sylvester Stallone starring in Rocky 5, which got worse critical reviews than Home Alone. So it got smashed out of the picture entirely. Home Alone made, well, we're gonna go over that in the next slide. Cameron, do you want to go over it for us?
Number 1 spot in all theaters for 10 weeks in a row. $100 million within those 10 weeks. It was a smashing hit. It actually created a record when it hit 264 million for highest grossing action comedy of all time, and I think it still holds that title, or maybe it's second or third, but one of the highest grossing action comedies of all time and most profited because it came off of a budget of only 14.7 million and made crazy amounts of cash. In its first weekend, it made 68 million, and Chris Columbus and John Hughes were like, all right, that's all it's gonna make. We're fine with that. We made a big profit. Boom. 10 weeks later, $100 million. Boom. Freaking 20 years later now, or even 30 years later, the movie's 30 years old now. As of November 16th, 30-year-old movie made $464 million up until this point with all its direct-to-video, Blu-ray purchases and all this jazz, and re-releases into theaters. But to think it kept the number 1 spot for 10 weeks in a row is fitting.
All right, now going over the future of the series. So Columbus had a vision for the future, and that was making the movie absolutely timeless. The fact that people are still laughing and loving this film today, being like, what, 20 years now?
30 years.
Yeah, 30, sorry. Yeah, 30 years now, and it's still coming on TV, especially during Christmas time. You're gonna probably see this on the
100%.
TV shows like 20 times when you're scrolling down. Um, yeah, the movie's carried out for 3 generations now, and for everyone to come together still and watch this film, well, it's timeless. That was the goal throughout it. But we all know how else the future of the series went. Second one, wasn't really as good, but then they recasted everybody in the third, fourth, and I believe there was a fifth Home Alone. Obviously, those will never be as good as the classics.
Yeah, no, they tried to recreate something there, but there was nothing to recreate. It's a
No.
timeless classic, and they shouldn't have made a second one, but they did. And everyone,
If only
that was our.
Macaulay Culkin still looked cute.
If only
All I
you
have to
could
say.
pronounce it as Macaulay Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin. I'm sorry.
All right, everyone. We're on YouTube, so if you want to check us out there, just IBB on YouTube or the IBB podcast. Type that into your search bar. Thanks for
Be
watching
sure to
our Home Alone.
subscribe
Yeah.
and share the podcast with all your friends. And have a great day to you all.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good one.